So you had this idea that we were going to start maybe introducing some people that are getting with our company as we're growing, things like that. But I said, yeah, it's a great idea, but it probably makes more sense actually to start with you because while maybe some people in Australia know your background and know where you've come from, I think there's a like huge majority of the people that follow us on socials that have no idea who you are. So I kind of want to actually dig into a little bit about like who you are, where you came from, because I think your story, while you're not the type to be like, hey, back in my day, even though you probably have a right more so of anyone in the animal industry to tell these types of stories. So if we go back to the beginning, like you're a dog trainer now or you're a dog business owner now, you're still in the tools a little bit, but like, did you grow up with dogs? Did you have grow up with animals? Because your life has a lot of animals in it, but did it always start that way?
Um, I had a Silky Terrier. I wanted a German Shepherd. I got a Silky Terrier.
How old?
I was
How old were
young,
you? Not the dog.
five maybe, 5 or 6, I
Oh
think
shit.
maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty young. So we always had a dog in the house. Um, I lived out in the suburbs, not much to do where we grew up. We had a quarry that was across the road, so I spent most of my childhood in a quarry. I wasn't like a super weird kid, but I did a lot of really weird stuff. Like I used to spend a lot of time making weapons like bows and arrows and spears and things. And anyway, so I used to live out in a very dead suburban area, and we used to sort of make our own sort of fun, mostly at this quarry, looking for foxes, skinks, and snakes. Never saw any snakes though, which was always disappointing. But yeah, I always had an interest in animals to a degree, but didn't have access to much early days.
Okay. So what was your, because spoiler alert, your future is going to involve animals extensively, but what was your first job? Very first job.
First job was fruit and veg at Coles.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that actually. Some of these questions I know the answer to, some of them I don't. Okay.
Oh, it was awful. I hated it, but it was good. I actually liked the people I worked with, and it taught me how to work. I had no concept of work when I started. I was pretty lazy actually as a kid. Like in my teens, it was pretty hard to get me motivated unless I was doing something I wanted to do. So, yeah, that was hard. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
stacking
wild because we're going to talk
cauliflowers
about that
was.
in a little bit later because I that does not seem to be your personality as I know it by
Mm.
any stretch of the imagination, but that's interesting.
And
Uh,
then I rolled on. This is where it all kind of started for me though. But I had a strong interest in animals. I got very intrigued and interested in the concept of human animal relationships early days, and like going to different places and seeing people either like at a zoo, people presenting, working with animals, or we used to go periodically to the police academy in Glen Waverley and just watching, the police handler work with the dog. That all of that whole aspect, I was pretty obsessive about. But once again, I didn't have access to any of it. My grandfather had dogs, and he was in the army, and they had German shepherds. He wasn't a dog handler, but there were just lots of little things that got me interested in that space. But then when I was about 17, I started working or volunteering, sorry, at a place called Monbulk Animal Kingdom, which for those who were born in the 70s and 80s, you would have maybe known a show called The Early Bird Show, and there used to be a boxing kangaroo on there, and that the guy Fritz used to bring on, Fritz and Andy, and that was their park up in Monbulk, and they didn't own it when I was working there. And when I was working there, it was a bit like a small version of what you saw in the Tiger King show. Is that what it was? Is that what it was called? The Tiger King?
yeah, I
Yeah.
never got around to it, but yeah, I think
Yeah, it wasn't quite as extreme, but we were in, like, I used to go in with, adolescent lions and do a range of different things as a late teen kid, thinking it was the craziest thing, but also being, I was scared shitless a lot of the time as well because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I wasn't with anyone who was very skilled either.
um so then yeah, spoiler alert, you end up at the zoo. Is that directly after this?
Yeah,
And
so I was
how does one
studying
get a
animal.
job at the zoo? Because how do you don't just go up and I would like to work with the animals, and they'd say, yeah, get in line, kid, because I'm sure
Yeah,
20,000 kids wanted to.
I was doing the so I was very lucky in a way to get some work, even though it was volunteer work at Monbulk Animal Kingdom, because there was very few places you could get access and the ability to work with, well, certainly wild animals in Victoria around that time. There was also Ballarat Wildlife Park. That was another option, and a couple of very small sanctuaries. So that was part of it. When I came out of school, I really didn't know what I was wanting to do. So I was doing a Cert 4 Animal Studies course. Through that time, I was applying to get into the zoo, and I got an interview. And when I rolled in for the interview, it was the scariest thing in my life. Drove into the zoo. I sat across from, I think, six. There was a panel of six senior zoo managers and curators
Yeah,
asking.
shit.
I hadn't turned 19 yet, and grilling me on all sorts of zoo related questions, and I didn't know an answer to a single one. I had no concept. But luckily for me, there were a string of us who went in for that interview. They only needed someone for a 4-week position, and the person who was hiring, he needed someone to help him on his to play on his basketball team, and I played basketball. So he hired me. He told me at a later date he hired me on that basis because he couldn't find anything in any of us that was remotely interesting. So I landed a job in the zoo hospital at that time. So I started working in the zoo hospital, which was a crazy
for 4 weeks.
amount of experience at 19 years of age.
4 weeks.
What's that? For 4 weeks, and
Which turned out to be how long?
17 years.
Because of basketball.
Yeah, play basketball. So don't discount sport, folks, if you have an interest in getting into the trade. But the zoo's a funny place. Like once you get a foot in, zookeeping is a trade certificate. So you really start your study once. You can only do it, well, at the time, you could only do it once you had a job in there, and they would pay for that at the time. So once you got in there, you're looking for essentially extensions on your contracts and then a full-time permanent job. And I was just getting 1 month extensions for probably the first year. So one thing I realized early days is if I don't have any skills, I can graft this stuff out. So I can just outwork people. I was pretty fit when I was young, and I did, if I had an interest in something, I would hyper focus on it. You could probably put me on the spectrum somewhere, but once I've locked onto something, then I'm pretty hard to push out of that space, and then I do get tunnel vision, and I'm also quite competitive. So if I'm, there's 3 of us going for a role in that sort of scenario, then I'll be working pretty hard to make sure I'm going to get the job.
Did you have an end goal in mind at that time, or you just kind of, your end goal was the next 30 days? Were you thinking in 30-day blocks at this point, or are you thinking in 4-year blocks of like, oh, that's where I want to be?
I didn't really have a plan B. So I think at that point, I did have a strong inkling to join the police force from my late teens, even the military, sort of going into my late teens. But like police at that time, they weren't going to hire 17, 18, 19-year-olds in that point in time. They were looking for people in their mid-20s. So I used to go to like the police career days and stuff, and they were suggesting go get life experience first, come back, and then we'll have a look at you. So I think I still had that in my mind, but once I got a foot in there, I realized that if I could make a go of that, there was no way I wanted to give that up, because that was probably something more suited to me at that point in time, and certainly was for a long time. I just made that my goal at that point in time. And there was, what you don't realize, the offerings in the zoo, like looking from the outside in, the zoo is the zoo, and zookeepers do stuff with animals. But once you get in there, there's so many specialist areas and things you can sink your teeth into. It's a pretty interesting space to work in for the most part.
So what is that like? I guess if you start as an apprentice, for lack of a better word, what is the first year of working in the zoo like for you? Like what did your day-to-day consist of?
It's it drastically changes depending on the area that you're working in.
Are you a lackey at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. But like base level zookeeping is you're a glorified janitor. So you're basically cleaning and feeding is really the task, and don't let the animals out. And I nearly ended my zoo career day 3, I think. So maybe day 4, we had 30 baboons come into the animal hospital, and that was my job. I was just caring for the animals in the animal hospital, and part of the task was, and I'd been trained over the first couple of days to do this safely. And it's a pretty easy thing to, it's pretty easy to do it safely. But I had to bring them all in, entice them into inside den so I could clean the outside space. So I went around, cleaned the outside space, tidied it, shut the door, came back around, and I was about to let 30 baboons out into the outside, and I had this little inkling of, geez, I'm just not 100% sure I shut the gate on the other side. I went round and the gate was wide open. So on day 3 of my zoo career, I would have let 30 baboons out into the zoo, which would have been absolute chaos. But
You would have been on Channel 7 for sure.
yeah, it would have been hectic, but and a very short-lived career. But anyway, I didn't. So, but yeah, you're basically cleaning, feeding predominantly at the start, and the more, I'd say, more interesting stuff. That's always going to be a core part of the job, but the more interesting stuff comes as you develop in the role. People want to see you have a high level of discipline, that you can go out, you can and essentially not make mistakes. And you start on the easier animals too. Typically, baboons is actually like day 3 to be moving baboons around is pretty hectic. Usually you'd be moving kangaroos around. You wouldn't be. So that was a little bit odd too. But usually you work with the animals that are least likely to harm you first, and then you work your way through. Like if you're working with carnivores, for example, you would work with small cats, binturongs, meerkats, little animals less likely to cause significant harm, and then you'll go work with the tigers after that.
Gotcha. So you are the last of a generation from the outside looking in because of what I've learned from you. You're the last of a generation of what they call free contact with large mammals. Is it free contact? Is that the word?
With some species. So we were with elephants. We would work hands on with those animals.
And this became your calling card, is the elephant game. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my interest early days was very much training and behavior, and I wanted to get more involved in that. I spent a lot of time working with bears. My former nickname in a previous life was the Bear Master. So you can refer to me as that if you like moving forward. But
no, I'm all right. I'm not going to call you the Bear Master.
So but there was very few animals in the zoo that had a reasonable amount of training built into the program, and the reason elephants do and animals like seals do is because it was an essential part of their care and management strategy. To look after them properly, they needed a high level of training. There's no better form of enrichment than training animals multiple times a day, get them problem solving, but also to facilitate their health care. Like we used to wash the elephants every day, take them for long walks. We do footwork with them, and then we do a range of activities to kind of stimulate them and make sure they're having a fun and interesting day. Seals, predominantly the same thing. So those 2 species were really the key ones if you wanted to sink your teeth into training, and that's where I decided I wanted to work early days.
Yeah. And how long specifically did you spend with elephants, and what was your learning curve of that like? Because I know your circle was pretty international at that point, right? Because I mean, there's not that many people there's millions of dog trainers. There's probably only a couple dozen elephant trainers. So you guys all pretty close internationally. What does that learning curve look like for you at that point? I mean, we're talking about an animal that can kill you like when it wants to, right? So
when I came onto the team, there were people exiting because the female elephant was harming people at that point in time. She sent one guy about 5 meters across the training yard in the air, and he weighed about 110 kilos at the time, I think. So, and she did that with ease. So it's very like it's a very risky job, and there were a lot of people being harmed at that time through that period, early 2000s, in the 90s, by elephants in zoos. So if you're going to do it, you need to sort of learn how to do it, I guess, the right way and in a careful way and in a way that's good for the elephant too. So the elephant gets a lot out of the process. But look, the only way to learn is by essentially working under a skilled person. So you can't go and do a course. You need to go find the best people in the world and work with and under those people. So there is a trainer that we bought out who I worked with for a long time, who was one of my mentors, Pat. And then after working with Pat for some time, I also spent considerable time with a very renowned trainer in the UK, Lee, and also with various trainers in the States as well, and also spent time in Southeast Asia.
yeah, wow. Yeah, that's it's pretty wild to have that be that's someone's day to day. And I know that things have changed a little bit, and that's not so much what gets done nowadays. But yeah, that's why I mentioned you kind of are the last of a dying breed that got to actually live and breathe this daily, which is pretty amazing. Like some of the stories that you have been able to tell, because you can't even tell me everything because there is some legal stuff and there's things on the background that it's just probably not even best professionally to tell, but you that's the ones that you do tell are pretty incredible, and the bonds that you have with those animals are pretty amazing.
I did go. I went to the zoo with the kids probably, I don't know, 3 years ago, but it had been, I don't know, 8 years or something, since 7 years since I maybe not that long, maybe 6 years since I've been there and seen the elephants. And I went down to the bottom paddock and I waited till there was no one around and no staff around. And I called out to two of the elephants and they came bolting down and were like reaching their trunks through and rumbling and squawking and making a bunch of noise. And it got a bit embarrassing because then I turned around and there was about, I don't know where the people came from, but there was about 70 people filming and all in and around us. Um, but it's yeah,
Start
it's
charging people, put your hat on. Yes, I'm the elephant whisperer. Yeah.
but it is, yeah, it's like it's a privileged position to be able to build a rapport and relationship with an
Mm,
animal like that in those situations and scenarios. And you spent so much time with them. And like I was there for the births of three elephant calves and there to help the mother on those first few days with the first elephant birth. I slept next to the mum and calf for the first, I think, 7 nights or something, 7 or 8 nights, like on the sand next to her. Like we were literally just sort of hanging out with her until she was comfortable with the calf suckling, and they build a really strong bond and relationship. So it's just when you go through things with animals, you build just another layer of relationship. As we know, like it's nice to do stuff with them, but when you go through stuff with them, that creates a different level of trust and understanding.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So coming out of the zoo, then you didn't actually start right back into dogs, or what did you do outside of once you were done with the zoo? Once your zoology career ended, what was your next phase of life?
So I did yeah, it was a bit of an odd move. So as I was leaving the zoo, I did do the NDTF Cert 3. So I was
Yeah.
doing that while I was still at the zoo. I started a dog training business, but then left the zoo, and I did a couple of things while I was sort of working out how I was going to develop the business and which direction I was going to go. So first thing, I did a bit of laboring for a friend, and then I strangely ended up in the wine business for just under 3 years. So I was ended up being an ops manager for a wine company, helping them move wine. I was dog training on the back end, doing in homes and other bits and pieces. And at the latter stage, that last 8 months I was there, I was securing property for ProDog and getting things ready. But I became a wine guy for a while.
Yeah, that's the natural progression, just zoo to wine, and then to dogs. But like, so you already have this vision for Pro Dog, because actually I don't even know some of this stuff, but you have this vision for Pro Dog while you're selling wine. So, well, we're not selling wine or whatever you're doing. Yeah, hawking wine. That sounds funnier. You have this vision for Pro Dog of a training business that you have while you're doing this. So you already have an exit plan from wine.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's interesting when you find your thing, I guess, whatever that is in life that you want to work with and do, it's very hard. Like wine's actually really interesting and it's a amazing product to move
Hmm.
and be interested in. And there's a lot of things about the wine industry that I really miss. But through that whole process, the wine company actually there was a horse trainer, ex-horse trainer, who was part of the company. He was an investor in the company. And I'd find myself on every break talking animals to him. We'd be talking about horses and dogs, and that's all we were doing. And he kept saying to me, just when are you going to get your dog thing going, through that whole process. But the thing I just always felt like there was an element missing. Like no matter, there's nothing that can fulfill you like the thing that essentially has become your purpose, in whatever way. So I don't think I could actually step into another career space that didn't involve animals and behavior and training in some regard, long term. So that was definitely a gap.
So did you have any crossover when you were selling wine to when you opened the first facility? Was there a gap in between there, or was it basically like the once, hey guys, I'm done because this is taking off? Or this
Yeah,
is
so
something?
I gave my resignation when we secured the lease. So once the lease was signed, then yeah, that's when I finished it.
Gotcha.
Saying just because I had to, yeah, I had lot of work to do to set up the facility. Um, but yeah, I had this concept. I wanted to create kind of almost like a themed dog land that looked like, and I think the thing that I like about our facilities is they're not like Disneyland immersive, but there's not like when you walk into our facilities, you feel like you're very much in a dog place. And I felt like that was missing to a degree in the trade. Like a lot of people were getting warehouses and just slapping a bit of paint and putting some pool fencing up. I think creating a space that was truly dedicated to dogs was lacking and missing. And that's something I probably got from my zoo. Like I was looking after a big part of my role supervisor role in the zoo was I was overseeing what they called the Trail of the Elephants, the Southeast Asian section, and that was an experience. So you come into Southeast Asia and there's all sorts of detail in
Yeah.
how you make that an immersive experience. We had people from Disney come out when I was at the zoo as they were going through the development phase of all of that, and I was involved in that project to a degree, and the project development part of it, and I think just layering a lot of that into businesses, and I think all good businesses do that. They do that. They do that well. They make you feel like you're in a place, you're in a sanctuary of some kind that relates to the thing that you're doing. So that was anyway. So that's how the business came about and the concept.
I mean, you mentioned people going into a concrete building, slapping stuff on. That seems to be, even since I've been in the trade the last 5 years, that's growing. When you started this 8, 9 years ago, was that did you get flack from that from any of our colleagues and people in the industry being like, oh man, the center, because you opened a big center. Like, was there, because the model still, for those that know, obviously, is you get a van, you put some candles in it, and you do in-home visits, or you go to the park. You were one of the ones in Australia, and you didn't do like a small warehouse. You've got the big space, and with this idea, we were going to do this. How did that go over when you pitched this idea to people?
Um,
Will
yeah,
you support it?
there's probably a couple of elements to it. I think people were so, and I'm happy to disclose this part. Maybe delete it if you think we shouldn't. Um, but 70% of our trade is daycare. Sorry, delete that part. 70% of our trade is training, 30% is daycare. It's the other way around, sorry. And I think there's an assumption that daycare is the bigger part of the business and supports that bigger part of the business. Um, so when probably the number one thing that I was a couple of things that I was told early days um, were that the training model itself probably wouldn't work. And then the second part to that is you won't keep staff. So staff will just stay around for a short period of time and then they'll leave. So, but I took those things like very, very much on board. So it's not that it didn't bounce off that those concerns and those statements. I just thought, well, so what's the reason people would leave a place? Well, firstly, are we creating enough work for them? What's the work culture like? There's a lot of detail to that. So in the zoo, I spent a lot, like I've done a lot of management courses and leadership programs and I'm acutely aware of a lot of
Mm,
things that people value in terms of the workplace. So I don't think it's as simple as people will just go. It's like, are we creating a bit of a career path for people? Are we creating opportunity for people, enough opportunity for people? Are we paying people enough? Um, and traditionally, a lot of the training organisations around the world didn't pay much, and animal work didn't pay much, and that was the same in zoos too. Like early days, you didn't get paid much at all. But I think to keep people around, then I think everything needs to really add up, and a big part of it as well is people feeling valued. It's not just about the money; it's about people feeling ultimately valued in an organisation. So anyway, so yeah, that were the considerations and things discussed early days. But I wasn't. Um, I'm quite creative in terms of what like I get a lot of fuel from doing creative things. Like maybe innovative is a bit of a egotistical word probably, but creating something like I get a lot of my fuel and energy from creating new things and developing things that are new. And now nothing is completely new. We steal from each other all of the time, and I expect that, and I expect people to steal concepts and ideas from us. But creating our own concepts and putting our own spin on things is probably one of the main reasons I do this. So I do appreciate people's feedback and opinions coming in. I did take a lot of those comments on board, but I wasn't too worried about any of it. Like I was worried about things, don't get me wrong, like paying the bills, etc.
Yeah.
But I wasn't worried about um, developing a concept that was a little bit different to the norm than what already existed.
Yeah, that and it's interesting because of the amount of work that, so when you mention like, your kid, you're like, fuck it, I don't really want to do this. You don't really, that seems very foreign to me because I know you and I have heard some of the stories of what it was actually like to get this thing off the ground. So from basically opening day till kind of now, how's this transition look like from you? Because year one is, some of the stories are pretty funny that you tell of like exactly how much you were doing to get this thing going.
Yeah, so I used to do open to closes, including training in the evening. So I used to do very long days. I'd take a sleeping bag, sorry, a bean bag into the pens, and I'd snooze with the dogs in the middle of the day. Keeping in mind we only had very low dog numbers early days, but it was the only way I could get through. And the other thing, because we were when you open a dog daycare at the start, and because we didn't have a name at that time, we weren't well known. But trainers knew me in the industry, so they were calling me up saying, "Oh, I've got this dog. It's hopeless with other dogs. Can we send it to you?" So I was getting all of these difficult dogs coming in that I was trying to sort of work through issues on my own and doing horrendously long days trying to keep things going. But it's the nature of growing something from nothing. So
Mhm.
it's now that the brand's established and as we grow into this next phase, it's a lot easier to get traction and do new things. But early days, you've got to do essentially what maybe no one else is prepared to do, or only a few are prepared to do to get the result that you're going to need. Another dog daycare opened up as well, about 1 kilometer from us when we opened. So we both opened at the same. Well, they actually opened 3 months after me. So that was the other thing that happened that sort of threw a bit of a spanner in the works. So that gave me a bit of a panic attack because I was already concerned about getting dog numbers up. Ultimately, um, and I don't say this with any joy. Ultimately, they closed, I think, 2 years later. Because at the end of the day, there's enough dogs for everyone. Everyone's got a dog these days. But yeah, they did end up closing 2 years later. But um, the first couple of years were hectic.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you talked about people that are bringing you some dogs that might be a little bit spicy. Did dog training come easy to you after what the amount of experience you had? Did you come with all the skills you needed, or were there still some things that you had to pick up, obviously because it is a different species? Or was anything groundbreaking to you when you came into dog training, or were you quite comfortable with your skill set as you came?
There's a lot of aspects of dog training that are completely new. Like working dogs, you don't work elephants in prey. So like there's different things and categories of work that new disciplines that I had to very much get across. I'm not worried about. So one of my jobs in the zoo was to go and assist with different animals who were being trained and developed in the zoo. So I used to have a sort of a semi-trainer coordinator role. So if the gorilla was having some work done, needed its teeth checked or something, and they were struggling with something, I might go in and assist with that part of the program. So I've never worried about any for a long time now. I've never been concerned about a training problem. So I don't, it never worries me what the issue is. So I like the strange issues. And that was pretty, it wasn't like that's always been the case. Like I probably maybe early days, first couple of years, I definitely was coming across things, and I saw the learning curve and the things that I needed to get across quite quickly to be able to offer everything that we wanted to offer in the program. So that first probably 3 to 5 years, to be fair, there was a lot of work that needed to be done in terms of my handler mechanics and getting up to speed with dog related things. But I've never been worried about the problem. I like the troubleshooting part of it. So that part came second nature because I've had to come up with creative solutions for a very long time. And if you're working, let's say with I don't know, a hippo, and you don't have access to that hippo, but you need to get that hippo to do something, and the hippo only eats cabbages twice a day. Like you have to find creative solutions to
Mm.
get the job done and the thing done. So I don't I like being in that space. Like I like a lot of what we do is like there's a program that ProDog delivers and there's curriculum in that, but that for me that's not the fun part. The fun part is the creative part when the program doesn't work, and then finding the creative solutions on the back of that and leaning on all of my animal experience, years of experience, and just going through the catalog trying to work out, is there something that's going to fit that might help us get through and solve this solution. That's a big focus with our training team as well, is just sure getting them across the curriculum first and then giving them and providing that next layer so then they can also, I think that's one of the most enjoyable parts of the business as well, is being able to come up with creative solutions for animals.
Yeah, it's funny because especially we've talked before. Like one of my favorite things one day was when came in, someone was kind of very boastfully proud of this thing they were doing with free shaping, right? And free shaping, for those that don't know, is basically the dog will activate a behavior and you mark and reward it. So if there's something on the ground and the dog boops it with their nose, you can click and mark it and reward the dog. And this is still quite a big thing, but there's a lot of trainers that live and die by this. And you came in one day and you're like, these fucking man, we were free shaping. I don't care if I don't ever have to do this again. We did this 20 years ago and we did it to death. So it's funny to think that you've had some stuff, even not like obviously the behavior stuff, but you've had some skills that from 20 years ago that you guys were doing with marine mammals or whatever it may be, that the dog people are just finding out. And you're like, yeah, man, I've been there, done that. I don't ever want to do this again because I had to do too much of it at one point.
And it's not to discount, like there's people who do
Agreed.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
really,
Agreed.
really well. So I think, and I use it, but it's a piece of the puzzle. I think what sort of gets not under my skin, but I don't know, just annoys me a little bit is the emphasis put on a thing as the answer. So that's because it's never like there's never one thing as the answer. It's always it's I don't know, like it's a bit like the Matrix as an example. Like it's always
Mm.
been able to pull from all of these experiences and preferably experiences that you've had with animals, other things. So yeah, we were like free shaping is a huge part of zoo training because you like a lot of animals you can't get near. So the starting process for near all animals is free shaping, just a step towards you or something. So we were free shape and seals at marine mammal training was very, very big on
Yeah.
free shaping early days. But the flip side of free shaping is you can create a lot of like silly animals that just start offering stuff. So you need a lot of
Yeah.
contingencies in place. So if you do it poorly, it becomes bad. But if you do it really, really well, it can really create a strong thinking animal that can troubleshoot and problem solve. So yes, it absolutely has a place. I just try and temper. Like if I see somebody getting, I don't know, maybe overexcited, I never want to kill enthusiasm for learning a new subject and topic. But if I feel like there's maybe too much, sometimes it happens. Sometimes I see it a lot with, and I used to do it all the time. You go to a conference or a workshop and you hear about the new thing,
The
and you
new
put
thing.
too much emphasis on the new
Mm.
thing when you come back and you see the experienced people. You talk to like, let's say people at your level around you, and they might feed the enthusiasm and whatever. Then you see the experienced people around you just sitting back, hearing it, listening to it, and then they might throw a question at you, well, what about this scenario? And then you're like, fuck, okay, I've got to contain myself here a little bit and maybe ask the right questions. So I think that's a trap I've fallen into many, many times. So I guess maybe sometimes I'm just trying to temper that a little bit because at the end of the day, until you've gone and practiced something yourself, I think that's the gap too. Like it's great to learn something, hear about something, get excited, do it once, go do it 500 times and look at all the contingencies around it and then feed it into your program carefully and then deliver it back out again. Like that's the ultimate um, exercise. And that's what real experience is and enables you to really troubleshoot things well.
You started with one facility. You opened up another that was just probably it's about 800 meters down the road, which is for logistically, it's wonderful. One of them is a daycare and training space. The other one is just a training space, which is super cool. And you have now successfully opened your third branch, which is on the other side of town from where we are here. And is that something that you ever foresaw happening? Was this part of the vision in the beginning, this sort of growth? Because I want to talk about a couple things here.
I think in business you if you sit stagnant, you die. So I don't think you have a choice to ever sit at a level. I think that's really important. I think you need to, and that's not me saying that, that's just, mentors and hearing it from other people over time. A business needs to grow and develop. So you need to find the way in which you want to do that. And there's a lot of ways to do it. It's not just about, like, for us, opening more centers. There's plenty
Yeah.
of different ways that we can develop the company and business, getting into specialist areas and all sorts of things. And we're looking at all of that all of the time. Um, we got to a point where we were ready for the next step, and we had two options. First option was company owned, so go and open something further away from us. So that was an obvious move, and we could have easily done that, no problem. Or do we go and franchise? Now, when we thought about franchising initially, I think a lot of people have an association with franchising.
Franchising can be a bad word for some people.
Yeah, and there's been, a lot of companies. So a lot of companies go out and they try and make a quick buck. So they have a concept. They have a juice bar concept. I want to get one in every suburb. Blow this thing up. Quality drops. It's impossible to manage quality at that point in time. Or if they're an exceptionally good company, maybe they can do it and they can do it well, and good for them. But most will reduce quality significantly over time. But there are also many very, very successful franchises, and it's one of the most successful business models that's still available. Now, the reason we decided to go down that route was really, really simple. It's one simple factor, and that is that the person in the building has skin in the game. And I think in this profession, that's everything. I can put managers in different places around the country, maybe overseas, but are they going to run it to the same level that somebody who has skin in the game will? Now, sure, if you find the right manager, no problem. But that is a very, very hard task. So that's why we landed. That's why we landed where we did. We decided we wanted to basically bring people in as partners for the business. We're not looking to scale up to a huge level. We don't want one in every suburb. We just want them in key locations. We're happy to do it slow and steady, which we are. And we'll build it very, very carefully over time, making sure we don't dip in terms of quality as we go. So our first franchisee is an exceptional fit for us, and that's going to be in an exceptional location for the business as well. So it's a great spot.
Um, I believe in what we do. So I'm the operations manager. So I'm now sort of looking after the day-to-day of the gig along with some of the other ones that we work with. But I'm big on our staff, especially new staff that comes in, is to go out and see things and bring it back. So I don't want to be, I never want to be pro dog propaganda for anyone. I want to like to go find out if you agree with what we do. Awesome. Like, because I've seen it work and I believe in what we do. And if you go out and you say that, hey, there's so much better stuff over here, cool, like bring it back, or that's fine. Like, but I think what we do in the industry is leading, and I think it's interesting that as we expand, I think the benefit of that franchising and maintain that quality control is that we can now bring what I consider quite skilled training to more and like open locations. I guess that's not really a question for you. So it's me just sort of like raising the standard of training is important to me.
The end game is to improve the standards of pet dog training across. Because like pet dog training, there are some amazing sole traders out there and providers out there who do an amazing job. They're very specialized and they've got an incredible skill set. So that's the thing. But as a general rule, there's a lot of larger providers who are providing puppy training and these types of services, which are extremely low level. So our goal is simple. Let's elevate the standards of pet dog training, certainly across Australia. And if we can go beyond that, then that's what we're going to do. So the game is pretty simple. And you're right. We're not scared of knowledge and information in terms of a business. We want people to bring information to the company so we can keep evolving the program. I spend a lot of time just ruminating on ideas and concepts and constantly challenging the way in which we do things. Like I run a leash reactivity aggression workshop. I've done about 20 of those. That evolves every time, and I keep evolving it a little bit every time to make it better. And that's the same with all of our programs. All of our programs are continually evolving. Our trainers are encouraged to go and, like you said, go get information externally and develop themselves as much as possible. And a lot of that can be woven into our curriculum without any issue at all. We want each of our trainers to have put their own flavor on things. We're not expecting you to come in and be robots. That's not an enjoyable environment to be in. It's not a successful way to run a business. It was the same when I had an elephant team. We all worked within the same system and approach, but each of our trainers had a different style in which they went about it, and that was key to them being able to do that successfully. So I've always honoured that and realised the benefit in that. You don't want to fuck with talent too much. Like you want to kind of let people do their thing to a degree, as long as it fits in with the framework.
What do you love about your day-to-day now? What do you find tedious about your day-to-day now?
There's a couple of things, I guess. There's a lot of admin with what we're currently doing, so that's a bit of a downer, if I'm being honest. But I really like working with at the moment. I'm working with a couple of obviously people who are going to be new business owners coming up, so or people in development of. So we've got one who is obviously Glen Waverley, which is opening, but we've certainly got other things happening as well. But that process I love, because I do love the business side of it, but I also love talking about the training part of it, and also hearing about their creative ideas and things that they can bring to the table as well. Because as we're talking to potential franchisees, they all want to bring their own slight flavor to things as well. Obviously, it's still going to be pro dog, but there's no reason they can't weave in a little bit of their own style of things as well. But I ran a workshop the other day. I did a reactivity leash aggression workshop the other day. And at the end of the day, the core thing that I need to stay attached to at all times is just dealing with strange and difficult cases. I went into work not long ago to help Michelle as well and have a look at one of her clients, and that ended up being an interesting scenario. I won't break it down here, but just being able to just stay continually involved in that and refine my craft. I do want to get another pup, but the time's got to be right. I'm developing 2 young children at the moment as well, obviously along with my wife who's leading the charge. But I'm certainly very busy with 2 young kids. Ray she's 8 now. She's slowing up a little bit, but she still needs a lot. So look, the timing is important because I can't neglect anything, and I'm obviously trying to blow up an enterprise at the moment. So there's a lot of things going on, but that's definitely on the cards. So getting a pup in the next little bit will be something that I'll be super excited about.
We look forward to that. We know you're a busy man, so I won't take up any more of your time unless you have any life advice and or any final thoughts before we close up.
No, but thank you, mate. It's great having you on board. You're doing a tremendous job. So no, thank you for taking the time to do this today.
No problems at all. And hopefully we'll get this up and we'll start getting a couple other people that we mentioned that are starting to grow with the company, and we'll talk dogs and talk shit and go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Same, bye.